Hi everyone, Ricky here from Behind the Bars TV and welcome to my channel. In this episode I'm going to tell you a bit about my backstory and my life story and how I got to where I am today, because a lot of my subscribers have been asking us different questions about why I was in prison, what sentence I was serving, and what did I do to land myself in prison. So what I'll do, just for me subscribers and me continuing support from me viewers, I will tell you all about my story and how I got to where I am now. So to start with, I was born in Elsick in Newcastle. I was born in Newcastle General Hospital and we lived in Elsick, and I lived there until I was 5 years old. So the area we lived in Elsick was one of the roughest areas in Newcastle. And at the time, the Elsick riots was kicking off, and every night there was mayhem, places getting burnt down, and it was a bad place to live in. So my mum and dad decided to move us out of the area, try and give us a better start in life, and we moved to South Stanley, which is in Stanley, County Durham. And the street we moved into, Cleveland Terrace, was the roughest street in the neighbourhood. And what I mean by that is every night there was something happening. There was violence, drinking, alcohol, drugs. And at that young age, I just thought it was all fun. I loved it. Looking back, my childhood when I was a kid, it was one big playground of madness, but I enjoyed it. At a young age, when there's things going on around you and you're seeing what I would call at the time, it was like excitement, like, wow, look what's happening now. People's fighting out in the street. And this was the place that I grew up in. And it was quite a violent and rough place to live in. But that street has actually been knocked down now because it got that bad. The houses were getting smashed up in the street when people were moving out. Me and my friends would smash the houses up, just being little tow rags. We knew no different. We weren't really getting told off because nobody really knew that we were doing these sort of things. I got into trouble a lot with the police from a young age. 8-year-old, I was in trouble with the police. I got took to the police station for shoplifting. 10-year-old, I got took to the police station again and arrested for smashing my school up. And at 10-year-old, you might think, well, why did you smash the school up? But well, me and my friends were little sods in school and we were fighting all the time. But the headmaster, who was a big bloke, he was about the size I am now, 6'4", big rugby player, and he would manhandle you in school. And if he'd found out that you'd been fighting and you had to go in front of the headmaster's office, he would drag you around the school by the scruff of your neck, smashing you off all the walls in the school. And he'd done this to me quite a few times. And on this last occasion he'd done it, he put a big massive bruise down my back where his launches up against the wall, and I've smashed my back off the wall. So me, wanting a bit retaliation, I went down to the school with my friend on the weekend and we've smashed all the school windows. We went back the next day, but there was a couple that we hadn't actually smashed some more, and we heard the car door slam, looked down, it was the police. We took chase up across the fields, and obviously they come and got us the next day, arrested us, took us to the police station, but because of our rage, they couldn't do anything. But this was the beginning of me getting into trouble with the police from a young age. And like I say, everybody around us, not everybody, but people around me had been to prison, and they glorified it and glamorized it. And it was something that from a young age, 8, 9-year-old, I aspired to go to prison. And this was the mindset that I was in because of, like I've mentioned, the role models around us. My next door neighbor had been in trouble with the police. He was in a naughty boys school, but he was getting rewarded for being there. Instead of going and doing work, they were getting took out, they were going canoeing, and they were doing different activities like this. So it wasn't a deterrent, and it was for me, looking up to these sort of people. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to go to prison. My dad had spent a lot of years in prison before I was born, 14 years to be accurate. And he used to tell me stories about what he used to do whilst he was in prison and tell me prison stories. And without him realising it, I was soaking all this up and thinking, wow, I want to be like that. I want to go to prison. I want to be like my dad. So this is where it all stemmed from. And this is the path that I was going on from that young age of being 8, 9 year old. And like I've mentioned, I went on to the big school after that because I got kicked out of that school because of what I'd done. And I went on to the big school and I got on with more people who were similar to me, like-minded. We all had a bit of a group and we used to smoke weed and get pissed from the age of 11. And we just thought it was fun. Like I've mentioned, didn't really have any good role models around us. And the people I looked up to were all up to this kind of activities, getting, as we say, getting wrecked, smoking weed, and drinking alcohol. And this was becoming a regular thing. It was mainly on the weekends, Fridays and Saturdays, but then it ended up being every night, school nights, 13, 14, 15-year-old, bottles of cider. And some nights would drink 3 and 4 litres of cider. And then would be getting into trouble again, causing aggro in the area, being little shits, to be honest. And I progressed on to going to the nightclubs when I was 15, 16, just in local areas, and going in, getting drunk and fighting with people from the area, people from out the area. And this is what was happening at that time. And again, because everyone in our sort of age group was doing similar things, and it was leading on to this, going to nightclubs, fighting, bragging about it to your friends during the week, saying, oh, we've had so many fights, I've had that many fights. And it just kept progressing from there, and things were getting worse. And I didn't have any ambitions in life, didn't have any goals, any lifelong goals, apart from the one I still harboured in my mind from being that young age about going to prison. And as we got older, a bit more trouble happened. We all got involved with a stabbing when we were 14, 15-year-old, and one of the lads that we were knocking around with at the time ended up going to prison for the stabbing when he was 15-year-old. And again, because my friend had went to prison, I was wanting to go to prison, and things were escalating. And then a bit later on, when I got to about 18-year-old, I was still in this mindset, clouded head, just no ambitions, nothing to look forward to in life apart from drinking, getting pissed with my friends and taking drugs. And 18-year-old, my dad got lifed off for murder, which sent me mind into more despair, and it just made me worse. So as things progressed on, I was around about 19, leading up to 20-year-old when I got arrested for a violent offence. I was in a house party, and I got into an altercation with a lad in the house, and I exchanged blows, and I've ended up hitting the fella, and I've then jumped on top of him with a bottle and used a bottle on him, and the police were looking for us for this offence. And again, I put no thought into what I was doing. I wasn't thinking about the victim at the time. I wasn't thinking about anything. I was still had this in my mind about prison, and that's what ultimately I was aiming for. So when I found out the police were looking for us for this offence, I actually went to the police station, handed myself in, and sat down in the interview room, admitted to everything. And the reason behind me admitting to it was because I was wanting to go to prison. So they put us in the cells all night till I sobered up in the morning, got interviewed, told them everything, put us back in the cells. Then they took us to the custody desk and said, right, we're releasing you to come back on police bail. And I looked at them and I was like, you're releasing me on bail. I've just told you what I've done. This isn't going to stop here. It's just going to keep going. You need to send me to prison. I was begging them to send us to prison, to plea for mercy, because I knew what I was doing and what I was capable of, and I needed to be sent to prison to stop us from doing this and to probably sort me head out. So 2 weeks before I was due to get sentenced for this offence, another altercation happened with another lad in my local area where he'd been on the phone and he was shouting threats down the phone. And me and another friend went round to his house because he'd been shouting down the phone at us. We were shouting back saying, do you realise who you're talking to? We went to his house, kicked his door in, and began to set about him with machetes. Something that I'm not proud of, but it's something that's happened, and it's something that I'm sharing, and I'm sharing my experiences just to help other people, to stop them from doing the things that I've done. Trying to intervene, trying to get a bit of help before things escalate and go too far, like it did with me. And again, whilst I was doing this, me thoughts and my mind was clouded. My emotions were clouded. I was full of drink. I was full of cocaine, and I didn't really put any thought into what I was doing. And again, ultimately, I was wanting to get to prison, but this time it happened. The police were looking for us again. I went to the police station, handed myself in, got took up to Consett police station, got interviewed, but this time I said no comment, but I knew I was going to prison, and got took to the magistrates court, and they remanded us into custody. So I was 20-year-old at the time, and it was a week before my 21st birthday, and I was on my way to Castington Young Offenders, somewhere what I wanted to go to. So as you can imagine, I'm in the back of the paddy wagon on the way to Castington Prison, and at the time it was Galaxy Radio. It's now Capital, but back then it was called Galaxy. And it was a Friday afternoon. We're bopping along the country lanes, going to Cassington, and I'm just sitting in the back, bopping away, dancing to the music, thinking, yes, I'm on my way. Like a normal person would not want to go to prison. They would be shitting themselves. And there's me getting took away from my family a week before my 21st birthday, not a care in the world, buzzing because I was on my way to prison. So I'd get to prison. I was in Cassington for 2 months, and whilst I was in there, the young offender prisons is quite violent, and you've got to stand your ground, and you get tested along the way. And as you can imagine, I've spoke about it a few times on other podcasts, but for the viewers that haven't already heard the story, I had quite a few fights whilst I was in there with the young offenders, the other lads, and that's just what happens in them prisons. You've got to stand your ground, or you're going to become a victim. I got moved on to a couple of different wings because of the altercations I got in. Got sent down to the governor. I got put on basic to start with, then I got sent down to the governor's again, and then I got put on behind me door, CC, without any TV, anything, no association. And that was for 2 weeks, 14 days with nothing apart from your thoughts, lying on your bed, thinking about where you're at. But again, just did not faze me one bit, and that was the mentality I was in at this age. I turned 21, went to Durham Prison, and again, because I'd been at Cassington, I'd had nothing there after 2 months, and I was like, right, send us on to the bigger jail. I went down to Durham Crown Court to put me pleas in, and whilst I was there, they were going to send us back to Cassington, but I'd said to the judge, I said, listen, I says, I'm 21-year-old, send us to Durham Prison. So he said, right, into Durham Prison, and that's where I spent the next few months. So I was in there for about 4 months by this point, and what happens is if you've been in prison on remand for 6 months and they haven't had you up in court for trial, give you a trial date, or something's went wrong with the trial, you can get what's called judge in chambers, JCs. So the first trial didn't go ahead, and I went up in front of the judge, and my barrister pleaded for judge in chambers, and I was released, not immediately, but I went back to the prison, but I got told I was getting released on bail, judge in chambers. So I got out after 6 months, and again, I was still in the same mindset. Nothing had changed. My head hadn't changed. My mindset hadn't changed. I was 21-year-old, released back onto the streets, and I went straight back to the drinking, taking drugs, and I was back out for 2 months before I went up for trial. I went for trial on the GBH, got found guilty, and within minutes, the judge sentences to IPP, life imprisonment, with a minimum term of 4 years. But the IPP is an indeterminate sentence for public protection, which is a 99-year sentence. If you can't behave yourself in prison, you will be kept in for 99 years, or when you're released, you're on license for that amount of time, or until the parole board sees fit where you don't need this sentence anymore. So At the time, I didn't really know what the IPP was. The barrister, sorry, had explained it to us before I got sentenced. Leading up to the trial, he was saying, you do realise if you get found guilty, you're going to get IPP. He said, it doesn't matter if you plead guilty or not guilty, you might as well run the trial because you're going to get IPP if you get found guilty. Back in Durham prison, and I'm telling the lads, oh, what sentence did you get? I got to 4 years IPP, and they were like, oh, no way, I feel so sorry for you. And I was like, didn't really understand it until I got told on paper it's 99 years. Outside of your cell in Durham at the time, you had little name cards with your name on and your sentence, and mine had on 99 years. So you can imagine people walking past looking at that card, wow, look at that, he's doing 99 years. And I'm looking at them thinking, that's me. And the one thing I will say is, be careful what you wish for. I wanted to go to prison, but definitely not for that amount of time and not for that sort of sentence. It was 18 years ago when I committed that offence, and I'm still paying for it now. I know I deserved a prison sentence. What I'd done was a terrible thing, and yes, I deserved prison, and it should never have happened. But I never imagined getting a sentence like that, a 99-year sentence. So not long after being in Durham, I was getting asked which prison I wanted to go to. From there, I was category B, and the nearest Cat B, Cat A prison was actually HMP Franklin, which was a 5-minute drive from where I already was, and that was where I wanted to be. So I got sent over to HMP Franklin, 21-year-old in a high-security prison, surrounded by the biggest, hardest criminals in the country, murderers, hitmen, and again, once I landed there, I was buzzing. I was like, yes, I've made it. I've made it to the top prison, thinking that at the time in my head, 21-year-old, I'm thinking, I'm the boy, or I've made it to the big house, which in fact is an absolute stupid, fucked up mindset to be in. Like, who the hell wants to be buzzing because they're in prison, they've made it, or they're in a high security prison doing a life sentence when you could be in for potentially 20 years. And there's me, happy because I'm there. But like I say, I'm mentioning all this because the youngsters at the age I was back then, some of them are in my mindset or the mindset I was in. And I'm trying to educate them and let them know that that isn't the mindset to be in. Or if you already are in that trap, in that mindset, get out of it. Have goals in life. Think of something that is going to give you a good outlook, a good future, not something that's going to mess the rest of your future up, because it has done for me. Like I've mentioned, I was 20-year-old when I committed the offence. My birthday is coming up soon. I'm coming up to 38-year-old, and I'm still paying for this sentence. But I was in Franklin for about 3 years, and I met a lot of big, serious people in there. I'll mention a few names, which a lot of you will know. Kevin Lane, everyone knows Kevin. He was in Franklin. I got on quite well with Kev. We've become quite pally in there. Another big time is Colin Gunn. You hear all these things about him in the press, in the papers, but when you're in there and you're living with these sort of people, they're actually people to live with and become friendly with them in prison. They're actually really nice fellas. So there was Colin Gunn, Andy Shack, Warren Slaney. Everyone knows Warren Slaney. I wasn't friendly with him. I wasn't his friend, but he was in there. He was on G-Wing. I seen him at the gym, and Warren is one of the most fearsome blokes in the Cat A system. Everyone who's been in prison or been to them type of prisons will know who he is. But these are the type of fellas that I was around at that time. But my dad was also in Franklin serving a life sentence, and we were both on the wing together, 21-year-old, and I'm living with my dad in a high security prison. And obviously that was, people have asked us before saying, what was that like for you? But again, in that mindset, I was happy to be there. obviously I'm not in that mindset now. Prison did work for me. Prison did sort me out, and that's what I'm going to get onto. But again, 21-year-old in Franklin, and me thinking, this is it. I've made it. So after I'd been in there for about 3 years, I've met, like I've just said, quite a few different people, and I got on with my time. I went in a few different workshops whilst I was in there. I'd done bricklaying course, done artwork, I'd done loads of IT courses, and I used my time constructively, which prison, if you want to, you can do good things and be a better person. It's like going to university. There's everything in there. There's loads of different things you can do to educate yourself and come out and be the best version of yourself. So being in there, I witnessed a lot of serious incidents whilst I was in there. People getting stabbed. I seen a fella get a coffee jar full of chili powder rammed in his neck and twisted in. I've mentioned it before on a few different things, so I'll not go into it too much. But I've seen someone get stabbed in the neck with a big metal spike. The metal spike was about 6 inches long and had been sharpened up in the woodwork class. And we were walking up the walkway, and some lad just went jogging past as if he's just jogging back to the wing, and he's just stuck it straight in the lad's neck, bang, pulled it out and just carried on running as if it was nothing. And we were like walking behind him, we were like shocked, thinking, wow, this is some crazy shit what's going on in here, and I'm surrounded by all this. But again, I was just taking it all in my stride. I wasn't feared, I wasn't scared, I was just getting on with it. But moving on from that, I got downgraded to category C after I'd done a 6-month drug and alcohol course. And the 6-month drug and alcohol course did actually do a lot for me. It boosted me confidence. It made us think differently. I felt different after I'd done that course, which a lot of lads did, because you had to open up about things and talk about past experiences and things that were holding you back. So I spent a year in Accrington, HMP Accrington, up Northumberland, category C prison. But again, whilst I was there, I used my time constructively. I'd done a load of different gym courses, and I'd done IT courses, well, even more IT courses from what I'd done in Franklin. And I'd done business courses, because I started seeing my future in a different light, seeing things what I really wanted for myself. And I've always been business minded. So I'd done loads of business courses whilst I was in there, and like properly got stuck into them and got the qualifications and put it to good use whilst I got out. But my beautiful wife, who I'm married to now, stuck by us throughout all of this, and she was waiting for us at the gate when I got released. I'd spent just over 5 years when I got released on parole, and she was waiting for us at the gates, and I moved in with her. We ended up having, over the next 10 years when I was free, 9 years, sorry, from when I was released in 2010 up until 2019 when I got recalled back to prison. In that time, we got married, we had 4 kids, I had about 3 different businesses, and everything was going good. But during that time, we started experiencing deaths in the families. Michaela's grandma, who I was really close to, died, and I went up and I found her dead behind the door, which absolutely broke my heart. And then a year later, my nana, died. She came back from the hospital. She had cancer, and her dying wish was to come home to look after her. So I took her home and I looked after her, but she ended up dying when I went. At the time, my wife was pregnant with our second child, and I went to hospital with my wife. She was in labour, and back home, my nana was dying with cancer, and she ended up passing away when my daughter was born. So on the same day, I experienced a birth and a death on the same day. But again, all these deaths were starting to have a bit of an impact on my mental state. And a year later, my best friend, Toddy, rest in peace, mate, who I'd been friends with from the age of 11-year-old, went through everything in our childhood together, smoking weed, getting drunk, knocking around together, having fun, going on holidays as lads do when they're younger. And this was my best friend, and he stuck by throughout all my prison. And he was experiencing mental health problems himself, and he ended up committing suicide. And I actually went to his house, kicked his door and ran upstairs into his upstairs flat, and I found him behind the door hanging. I had to cut him down, try to bring him back, mouth to mouth. Me and my best friend, Hobie, who was there with us, we both tried our best, but it just didn't work. We couldn't bring him back. He was gone. And that sent our mind into turmoil. And we started drinking heavily again. And like I say, my mind was just dipping, going into a downward spiral. My mental state, all the things that I was looking positive in life, that I was looking out to, my mindset just went from positive to negative. A year after that, my wife's auntie also had done the same. She committed suicide, which impacted our mental state even more. And then a year or two after that, me other best friend, Ross Hunt, rest in peace, mate, he'd done the same thing. He was suffering with his mental health, and he ended up hanging himself. And these, my best mates, these were lads in the 20s, and I experienced like 3 suicides in a matter of years, and it just impacted me mental state. I was drinking heavily again, and up to this point, I'd been out of prison 9 years, and I'd been carrying this on my shoulders for a long time. Like I mentioned, drinking again. At the time, I had my own business, buying and selling cars, and this is what I was doing. And one night, I decided, when I got a phone call of somebody asking if I wanted to buy a stolen car, stupidly, I went on to buy the car, and as I was on my way to sell it when I'd had a couple of drinks, and I crashed the car. The airbag went off, got out of the car, ran away, left it, and 6 months later, I was in my recovery truck. Luckily, I'd sorted my head out. I was in a good state. I hadn't had a drink for a few months, and my head was becoming clear. But on my way to work to pick a car up, I looked in the rear view mirror, and I seen loads of police cars, and I ended up getting boxed. 10 police cars got us in the back of the police van, told us I was getting recalled back to prison. My world just fell apart. Everything that I'd built up in them 9 years, marriage, kids, businesses, all just gone because of my stupid actions and what I'd done. But again, I landed myself in prison back in Durham. Mental state was just going downhill. Back in Durham, this sentence was still ongoing, the 99-year sentence. So again, I didn't have a release date. I didn't know when I was getting out. And this went on for 13 months, not knowing when I was to be released. So I got locked down in the COVID, and the COVID meant we had no association. There was nothing. It was the same as what was happening out here. We were on 23-hour lockdown. And everyone was just suffering really bad in prison with their mental health. It's bad enough being in there anyway, but being in there on a lockdown, 23 hours a day, maybe sometimes you were locked up for 30 hours until you got exercise the next day. But again, I turned this round. I used this time constructively, and I got myself in the best mind state I'd been in a very, very long time. I was training every day on the yard, just doing bodyweight circuits, doing loads of burpees, bodyweight squats, press-ups, all them type of exercises. And I got myself extremely fit. I lost about 2 stone in weight, the fittest I'd ever been. And I started becoming the fittest I'd ever been mentally as well as physically. And in that time, I wrote my own book, the fitness book, Behind the Bars, Ruthless Fitness, which is doing amazing. It's getting sold worldwide. It's went to America, Australia. It's in loads of different prisons. I've had loads of great feedback on it. And this was all whilst I was on COVID lockdown. So again, I'd spent 30 months in prison, come up for parole. I'd done a couple of courses whilst I was in there. The parole board seen that I wasn't a risk to the public, so they released us back into the community. And I've been out for 2 years now, and everything's going well for us. I've bought my own gym. I've got my own, it's called Ruthless Fitness. I've got my own clothing. The book's called Behind the Bars, Ruthless Fitness. And it's all coming into one big package. I've got big plans for the future, all to do with this same theme. But again, I'm helping people in the community. In my gym, I've set up a group. It's called Behind the Bars Support Group, and it's helping men who are suffering with mental health. But I'm also working with kids, and I'm teaching them about prison. But the kids I'm working with are ones that are going down the path, or maybe it's the path that I went down when I was that age. And I'm trying to pass on a bit of knowledge and advice. And I'm also doing PE lessons with them, teaching them how to do different exercises. And I'm getting good feedback, and it's good what I'm doing. I'm enjoying it. The kids are getting a lot out of it. And this is the reasoning behind my YouTube channel as well, to let people know what prison is really like. And that's why I'm telling you my life story. I know a lot of you might have already seen the podcast that I've done with the likes of Sean Atwood, but I'm sharing my story to try and help the younger kids from going down that path I went down. And like I say, everything's going well for me at the minute. I'm doing everything in my power to give myself, my wife and kids the best future possible. I'm working every hour I can. On my YouTube channel, as you know, Behind the Bars TV, I'm doing loads of podcasts. I'm interviewing ex-prisoners, and it's not just any ex-prisoner. Ex-prisoners, there's any amount of them. But I'm not just interviewing the ones that have come out and they're not doing anything or they haven't changed. I'm interviewing ex-prisoners who are actually reformed. And I'm telling these stories or interviewing them and getting the stories to pass on to you viewers, subscribers, and the younger generation to actually watch it and see what is actually happening in these prisons, and just to let you know what it's really like. Because I was here to think there's youngsters in the same mindset I was in, and they've got no role models, no one to look up to, and just a little bit of help, advice, and a bit of guidance from someone like myself who's actually been there and done it will go a long way. And I'm just bringing this to the attention of more people to inspire more of you that have been down that bad path and come round and turn your life around. Get out there and do something good and help the younger generation or help the people that need it. Because if you get people coming out of prison and they've got no help and they've got no one giving them praise for good things they're doing, then they're just going to go back to the old ways. And then it's going to have a bad effect on everyone, the community, the probation, everyone who's involved. It's just the victims, the defendants' families. It's just bad all wrong for everybody. So the more we try and help each other, the more it's going to work. But I think I'll leave that one there for now, people. Hopefully I've answered a lot of questions, what people have been asking us and wanting to know a little bit more about me. Everything's here. It's all laid bare. There's nothing that I won't talk about. Everybody knows me past now, and I'm here to educate and pass on my knowledge. But if you are enjoying the content, remember to go and like and subscribe and comment to help me channel grow. But I hope you're all doing well. Take care.